next 2 hours, we're going to be walking through 4.5 hours of content. So what we've done is we've asked each leader of a section to think about what's the important parts to talk to. There's a lot of great content in the slide deck that will show you where to find it, and it will be also updated and posted on the Keys to Successful Chapters site as the prior version was, as will the video that we're producing. So anyone who doesn't want to be recorded, this is your chance to run away, because the recording is on. So with that, I'm going to start us off with our first speaker, who needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway, because that's how he said it this morning.
Just a member.
No authority, no nothing, just a member.
So our first section is just an introduction to Cozy, and who better to provide that introduction than our immediate past president, Alan Harding. He's also the past president of the UK chapter from 2014-2016. He's an engineering fellow and head of the Information Systems Engineering section at BAE Systems Air. And he's a chartered engineer and a fellow of the Institute of Engineering and Technology. So, Alan, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. I put in the intro, I have done the chapter lead thing for Cozy UK, so hopefully I'm speaking from a position of some knowledge. We've got quite a lot of information. I've hidden some of the slides, but we'll go through relatively quickly. You can look at stuff in the background. Next slide, please. So, first off, interestingly, really this deck talks about, well, why be a chapter lead, why be part of the leadership. Clearly, as I was talking about this morning, it's a service opportunity to give back, but it's also definitely a personal development opportunity, and to some extent, by putting something in, helping improve systems engineering and engineering in general in your area, you're actually helping yourself, your employers and the wider community. So there's a giving back, but also improving the context all around you. And the bottom here, I certainly went into the chapter leading role deliberately with my own personal development in mind. That was one area I thought, if I do this, I should gain from doing this. If we could go on to the next slide, please, Tony. So, this has gone, if you like, from the what to the how.
Sorry, I just realized I never brought up the telecon or the global meet, and there's no speakerphone, so that's... Okay. So Danny's going to work on that while you continue, Alan.
So that was, if you like, the why. I think that this touches on the how, talking about being a team member. As we all know, as the leader of anything, you can't and shouldn't make it all happen yourself. That's not what being a leader is. It's about delegations, motivating a team, setting a vision, and all the rest of it. Here, this is touching on the fact that, if you like, you're, as a chapter lead, depending on the size of the chapter, but in essence, all of the activities you'll be doing them, whether it's a 30-person chapter or 300 or bigger. Obviously, the rigor you'll apply to strategy, if you like. It might be quite a simple strategy, simply described, or it might be something more complicated, but the point is you'll get the experience in all these areas and learn from others while doing it. Doesn't particularly say on the slide, but generally within a chapter you also have some other people with huge experience who you can lean on, and they will certainly be happy to share their experience and their ideas. And wider than that, I guess this initiative, which is great, is showing that we've got the wider Cozy resources. So whether it's between chapters in your sector, through the sector leadership that we've got now, or whether it's just from your wider Cozy network, there are pretty much always people who can help. And through things like the Keys to Effective Chapters, we're looking to make sure that there's information available to you
719 it won't go out.
on known good things.
Good one, man.
Push on again to the next slide, please, Tony. It's like an endurance test, isn't it? So, who are we? If you've just landed from Mars into the International Workshop and didn't know who Cozy are, this reminds us that we're the International Council on Systems Engineering.
And welcome to the meeting. Passcode followed by the pound or hash key, and I'll connect you.
So, not for profit, we're here to create value to deliver
Please hold while I
benefit to
confirm your
system engineering,
passcode.
not to make money.
5, 4, 3, 1, 4, 6, 750 is not a passcode that I can enter. Again, followed by the pound or hash key.
You have to be able to cope with uncertainty and change, which is quite an important thing, and not be distracted. So, in COSI, as I
Please
suspect everyone
hold
was at
while
the
I
leadership
confirm your
plenary,
passcode.
we're
5, 4,
Sorry, did I say advance it?
1, 4, 6, 7, 5, 0
All these
is
slides
not a
are
passcode that I
available,
can
or will be
confirm.
available
Please
on
try
the-
entering your
Absolutely.
passcode again.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Alan,
followed
where
by
were
the
you?
pound.
I was trying to read.
Next slide.
You were there.
So, in COSI, not for profit, we're about creating outcomes, helping people and the like. But if Gary was here, he would absolutely highlight that to do that, we have to be sustainable. And so that includes whether we've got a $1,000 budget or a $100,000 budget, planning things and making our activities happen in a financially sustainable way is important to us. Certainly Gary's maxim is never plan to do anything to lose money. Circumstances happen, but we do have that in mind. Doesn't stop us, of course, investing to achieve a certain purpose deliberately, but generally we want to plan to still be here. You've heard most of these numbers this morning, so 17,000 people involved, both individual members and associate members via our CAB organisations. 67 chapters, 6 emerging is great news. You know, we've got groups of people wanting to come together and form chapters, and then collaborations and the like elsewhere. And as I said this morning, I think already our diversity across sectors and across types of people applying systems approaches is already a super thing. If we could carry on to the next slide, which just gives a sense of some of the areas under this broad church of systems engineering. I won't drill into any of those, a lot of them are familiar. I'd guess that probably all of them are covered by something happening at this workshop, and certainly within our InCOSI family we've got experts in all these topics around. So certainly again within a chapter context, if there's an area you think would be interesting, then there are resources, there might already be speakers and that you could draw on. If we carry on, the next slide please. The next few slides really reprise who we are and what we do. I'll just be highlighting what we say we're about, who we are and the like. So again, if we just carry through the next slides, I already this morning talked to our vision and mission. Basically, each chapter has, will generally have their own vision and mission, which is about in their context. I think we've got a good start for that discussion of what, for my chapter, for our chapter, what's important to us, what's our context, what we're looking to try and do. As Gary said this morning, we are 3 years through 5 years of some objectives that we created to be quite demanding to help the board focus on what's important to evolving InCOSI as an organisation. I'll only call out one really. I think there's a build, if you could just press, I think there's a blue box down at the bottom that will come up. The growth objective is interesting because you could either see that as something you do to drive the other things or an outcome of the other things. Clearly, marketing membership is a particular activity, but to some extent, if we're doing all the other things, if we're creating impact, if we're creating competency building alliances, growth should also be emergent. So it's definitely a chicken and egg, whether it's InCOSI Central or locally in a chapter. On the next slide, it just highlights the InCOSI leaders who coordinate each of the objectives, and also our Director for Strategic Integration, Art Peister, former academic director, I think also former CAB chair if I remember correctly. Art is responsible for orchestrating all of these objectives because they link to each other and feed through, and so he does a great job for us. The next slide on value streams tells us about one of the other areas that we're evolving in COSI. Put simply, I mentioned sustainability. At the moment, the majority of our income comes from member dues. We know that for mature professional societies, you want the member dues share of your income to be nearer a third or a quarter, not from memory. sorry, you probably want nearer to 25%. At the moment, it's probably close to half our income if you exclude events. So what we're looking to do, these areas where we have always been active, is to get more strategic focus on certification as a value stream. We have Courtney who leads that value stream in the corner over there. We have certification, we have a product if you like, understanding how to promote it, evolve it, support people in their awareness and the like, to build value. And as I said before, value is not just financial, so it's about impact, learning, all the other good things, but also sustainably growing our organisation. I guess thinking about chapter, there are clearly analogies. I mean, chapters of different sizes are involved in some or all of these types of activities. I think the logic of viewing them as a value stream, so understanding the costs and effort in doing things and the outcomes, is certainly a perspective that the board has now adopted. Looking more widely, if we could go on to the next slide, please. My Incosi SE vision is in my bag, but we all know that I highlight that a lot. It sets a great context. It sets a context for Incosi at the global level. Equally, we know that the Netherlands chapter have created their own version of the SE vision, looking at the context and saying what's important to us. I think that's a great achievement and a really interesting opportunity for other chapters, national or local, to consider what of this stuff matters to us, how might we be driving things forwards. And I think actually interesting, it's a good opportunity when looking at the chapter strategy to see what bits of the vision could matter locally. The next slide gives, I hit that one, that's great, yep, so perfect. Incosi has got a set of values and principles. We created these around 5 years ago, if I remember correctly. The late David Wright caused us to do this. He drew me actually in to support the board to say, well, what matters to us, what is enduring? And these really are about the type of organisation and the type of people we are. So just picking one, you know, if we were thinking of working with someone who overtly wasn't, I don't know, respectful of diversity or respected people's intellectual property, we probably wouldn't want to partner with them. So it both gives us a shorthand for what's important to us, a basis for making decisions. If we take this initiative, would it conflict with any of these things? But it also allows us to say, this organisation who we might partner with, are they our kind of people? And again, the link takes you to the wording on all of those, which we won't go through. So I think if we go just through these next two slides, the values and principles, they're there in the pack. And then to the next slide. So again, as you come out of your alien spaceship and wonder why you want to be a member of Incosi, for me, the networking and the fact that people are so generous with their time and information is one of the huge benefits of Incosi, both in person but also electronically, because clearly, on average, most of our members aren't able to come to the international events, but we have regional, national and local events. The networking and I guess the outlook of people when networking is one of the huge benefits. Those quality presentations and I guess a growing online library, including what we're doing here, is a lot of super content that also can be played through into local chapter events, where either using pre-canned things or getting access to guest speakers because you've seen material is really quite valuable. It talks here about a number of things to do with personal development, so career enhancing leadership training and experience. Personal development's a big driver for many of us, either to maintain our currency, our competency, or actually to develop in other areas, and a huge wealth of things. Not the least, our two flagship publications, Insight, the practitioner magazine, usually based on themed special editions, and the more scholarly systems engineering journal, all available to members. It's my personal view that most members, most of the time, forget we've got access to that, and there's actually some really good stuff. I went back and looked at the first editions of them for a newsletter article 6 months ago or so, and found some great articles from edition 1 of Insight. So it's a great resource. You could actually draw some of those original ones out and probably play them through into a chapter meeting to say, well, we said this about 20 years about systems and software. Has the world changed? So all sorts of interesting things. And I guess the bullets down there are a little like the top version. So I think there's lots of benefits, both, if you like, as a chapter leader or a new chapter leader you can draw on, but can highlight to members, prospective members, about, well, hey, that's why you want to be in our gang. If we go to the next slide and just click through the builds just to fill it up, this is again a bit of an eye candy view of a lot of the assets or products. You've got our top left, key publications, periodicals top right, the activities, the international and regional events lower right, and then again some of the other elements like certification, the standards we've contributed to. I talked a little about those this morning. It's, for a relatively small society, it's probably fair that we punch above our weight in our field, and I think really that's down to the expertise and commitment of individual members. In essence, INCOSE helps provide a context, and then people get on and do amazing stuff. So I'm just timing. I should keep going and keep going briskly. Hopefully we're all right timing waiting. So if we go on, I'll talk a little bit about the organisation. You could spend all day on this, and you could probably spend all week on the history and theory of why it is what it is, but it is what it is right now. It is an evolving organisation. Looking over my most recent 2 years, we've evolved. We've now got this Director for Strategic Integration. We've got more PM support for a number of the activities. It will carry on evolving. But in essence, the most populous activities, if you like, are our chapters, where most of our members are involved. We do have a few members at large unaffiliated to chapters. That is people's right. Personal view, I think the benefit comes from being a chapter member and that communication. And I think we may well do a little bit of marketing to individuals, say, hey, did you realise there is a chapter you might wish to affiliate to? And then technical operations, Mike Celentano, our technical director, summarised a lot of the amazing things going on in Tech Ops. Broadly, 40 global working groups. We then have a number of chapters with national working groups linked to those global working groups in some way or other. In terms of the oversight, you can either view the INCOSE Board of Directors at the top or underneath and supporting. They're sort of two mindsets of the same thing, but certainly INCOSE, the global or international entity, has the Board of Directors across all the functional areas. And then we have professional support. This calls out the central office, the UMS office, but we also have other specialist contractors in areas like certification, in areas like events, or marketing and communications and that. Very much sticking with one of our principles, which is about volunteer-led, supported by professional staff. And that's where the expertise comes in, and that's where some of the operational issues can be dealt with on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, whereas as volunteers, we have other constraints on us as well. If we could go on to the next slide, please, Tony. So, simplified, a little bit more of what chapters and Tech Ops are. I won't dwell on that for the purpose of this, and just carry on to the next diagram, which gives a bit of a sense in a sort of organisation chart. You've heard about the Board of Directors. Executive Committee is INCOSE language for the four officers, the President, President-elect, Treasurer and Secretary, who I guess legally have slightly different responsibilities to the other elected directors. I couldn't tell you exactly what they are, it's a little bit subtle, but in essence, the Executive Committee can look at some more tactical aspects outside the scope of the full board meeting. So if something was worked through, we could delegate to the ex-con, finishing off and making a decision on a certain topic. But stands, I think, stands on record that major decisions are made by the INCOSE board. That's why we have directors, that's their responsibilities. Mentioned the admin office, talked about technical operations. This is where chapters and sectors fit in. It was 5-6-ish years ago we created sectors to give chapters a direct voice on the board, a voting voice on the board, and also to give that accountability. And I was part of those decisions to create sector directors, and I think it's worked well, because the sectors can organise themselves as it suits, as it supports their chapters. So there are slightly different structures between sectors 1, 2 and 3. That was always what was intended. We didn't want to put down a template on the sectors. We wanted to say, evolve and serve your chapters. And to my observation, that's what has happened. That's how it's evolving and continues to evolve. And that diversity is a good thing, because the types of chapter do vary, and the geographical issues and what's important vary as well. There are a few standing committees of the Board of Directors. There is the committee that looks after our policies, currently called Ways and Means, but we're actually going to do something radical and evolve the name to what it actually is, and it'll be called Policy Management Committee. Sort of works. We have the Nominations and Elections Committee that helps find candidates for elected roles, including sector directors. And we have the Fellows Committee, which appoints fellows and the like. So from memory, they are the 3 standing committees that report into the board. And then we have our Corporate Advisory Board, within it the Academic Council, 106 members, 28 academics as of today's figures. Hugely important, both in terms of the sponsorship, I guess, moral and financial from those organisations, but also many of us as members are employed by or are faculty at Corporate Advisory Board and Academic Council organisations, so they are key stakeholders to us. It's fair to say also that some chapters, especially national ones, have got equivalents of a Corporate Advisory Board as a way of having ongoing local sponsorship. There are different models available. Certainly there's a number of chapters like that in EMEA, and if people are interested in what those models are, I know that the relevant chapter leads are always delighted to share that information. We could just carry on. This next slide is really quite exciting. We now have a set of structure charts for all the roles in COSI, who's in the post and when they start and stop their terms. It sounds simple, but this was a little bit of a forensic job to put them all together. We've got them in Connect. I believe we'll be making where that is more visible more easily, so that chapter leads can get hold of them. But we have this information, and our Chief of Staff looks over it. Mindful of time, there is a set of slides following that drill down into the different areas that I probably won't go through, Tony, as we're about on the timing. If you could go through to 32, which is about branding and the like, something I guess I care a lot about and has been really positive over the last couple of years. We've got a much better grip now on how to look professional and consistent, and Rachel Blanc, our Marketing and Comms Director, has helped us get this information with the guidelines on usage, stuff we're all familiar with in a corporate setting, but making it easier for us to operate a standard style tailored to chapters and the like. And what I would say is there is now help on this sort of thing, and to have the discussion about, hey, my chapter's got this, it'd be nice to modernise it, what could it be? There clearly is a degree of variation involved. So I would commend the support from the central marketing and comms team if you're looking at your branding and how you put yourselves across. Because I guess the simple point is, whether we're in an MOU chapter or a local chapter or whatever, we're all part of the one in COSI family, so making sure we can project ourselves clearly in that way, as well as be distinctive, is part of what we're doing, and it's been a real positive, I think, over the last couple of years.
And Alan, let me add a little color commentary on
Please.
this.
Yeah.
Within Sector 1, and for you to steal if you want from Sector 2, and same with Jean-Claude, Rachel and I partnered and basically put out a $200 bribe to any chapter that wanted to update their logo to make it compliant. I call it a prize for the artist. And several chapters have done so, and we said it was open through today, but I'm going to keep it open indefinitely. As Alan pointed out, it's to help us have a recognizable worldwide brand, and I think it's a very valuable thing. So we know it's not a pain in the butt to update your logos. You've been very attached to them. They are very personal and reflective of where you're from. But this is helping us go forward. Just wanted to remind everyone.
And there is room for variation within it. It's not just a cookie cutter type stamp. And interesting to know, our key things, our symposium and our workshop have branding all keyed in with the main one, so distinctive but lined up. The final slide I'll use is just 35, there's more pictures of me in kilts.
She wears it better.
Undoubtedly, but I have the right to wear it. Final slide, this is a quick reference with lots of useful links. So this slide deck, I assume these links work as well. I'm sure before they're published we'll check on them. There is a wealth of information. We steadily are working to improve our IT and the accessibility. So some of this stuff is a bit hard to find at the moment if you're looking sort of top down. But always remember, if you're stuck, you can always ask whether it's the relevant sector director or the admin office or anyone, frankly. People will try and help and find stuff. Because if you're having trouble finding it, probably someone else would and we could improve it. So hopefully that's given a little bit of a rapid introduction to Incosi, the overall thing while we're here. And I'll stop at that point and, well, time for any questions, have we, Tony? Or run straight through?
I go a couple questions.
Okay.
Take advantage of the past president who has nothing else to do.
Exactly. I haven't taken any questions or observations before I go and relax again.
Any questions for Alan?
Clearly it was amazing.
Really amazing. Thank you very much, Alan.
And thank you for being part of this.
There is one question for you, Alan.
I don't know if this is a question or a remark. This is
Go back
about
with the cameras. Go ahead.
2 slides you presented regarding the Incosi organization with the central organization, sector level and chapter level. We clearly saw that there is let's say a hierarchy, and perhaps there is a need also to talk about sector leadership and how far the decision process could be flowed up and down between chapter and the central level. Because currently, this is your next slide, when we look at the position for votes, there is no involvement of the chapters in that slide.
Those chapters are represented by the secretary.
Yeah, which means that we have to collect the decisions up and down, and this is really stating the fact that we need stronger sectors, at least for sector 3. We are not organized to have this decision-making flow up and down. Currently, the EMEA sector is more dedicated to coordination between the chapter. There is nothing, let's say, organized to, let's say, be involved in the decision process. And the first very factual number is the budget at the EMEA sector. This is very small compared to the Incosi organization or Incosi central level. So this is one remark I will push toward Jean-Claude to really reinforce the sector level, because this is the only way to enter in the, let's say, decision chain or decision process.
Okay, so responding to that.
So this
So thank you.
is
Yeah,
more
no,
a remark rather than a question.
Yeah. So just feedback on that. As I mentioned, the reason for creating the sectors and the sector directors was to give voting members of the board directly accountable to their chapters. We don't have a mechanism whereby to make a board decision, the 67 chapters press a button and it feeds in.
Yeah.
What we have is the sector directors representing their constituencies. In terms of the budget, the sector budgets, I believe, well, sectors are still fairly new. This year, I believe we've set higher budgets than previously, based on the evolving view of what a sector can do and what's important. Instinctively, I expect that number will keep growing because we get better engagement with the chapters and we see more things we can do in common between chapters. And basically, the money should follow the good works, if you like. one of the key things is, as we are increasingly successful with our value streams and generate more non-member due income from other sources, we will have more money we can share out. So we have the accountability through the sector directors now. In terms of organisational models and or types of decisions where we might need direct interaction with chapters, there's nothing stopping us evolve our organisation. What I would say, one of the first, I guess, major exercises in democracy was the chapter governance and financial model task team, where every chapter lead and chapter was involved, so it was invited and able to be involved in that. Personal reflection, we didn't end up with that many chapters sticking through the journey and being part of that. So maybe as we do more things, hopefully people get increasingly confident that by participating, they can change things. In fact, the CGFM changes in policies, in membership, in financial models, in chapter governance, it has actually led to some quite significant changes that I wrote to all the chapters about and will evolve. So we collectively setting COSI up and control it, so we can carry on evolving it. Personally, I feel that as the sector activities joined up between chapters evolve and there are more good things that can be done, I imagine that via sector leads such as Tony, that case will be made and hopefully the budget allocations will follow it. Anything you want to add, Tony? Is that?
Serge as well.
Of course, sorry, excuse me, Serge. Yes.
I would, just two notes. One is, I can speak for Sector 1. I actually put out a call for budget inputs to all the chapter leaders. So in terms of insight and ability to influence the budget, certainly we're trying to make sure that that's there. Secondly, and I can do better at this, when there are decisions on the board that are affecting the chapters, I try to reach to the chapters and get their opinions so I'm elected by the chapter leads in Sector 1. I represent them, I serve at their pleasure, I'll go away if I'm not serving them. So, that's the role.
It's an it is I think a rapidly evolving part of INCOSI because our sectors are fairly new. And feedback like that and conversation within sector meetings or whatever is great to help us see how to evolve it. But thank you for the question.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Got a hand up at the back.
Oh,
I
Tony.
have a
Go ahead.
question after the comment. You mentioned, evolving, and one of the things that I've seen in my professional organizations is we tend to build up the organization and it creates a really awesome hierarchy, but it also inhibits the adaptability of the organization. So I would just wonder, is adaptability one of the considerations based on the roles and the structure of the organization, so that there is, as Tony's taking more of a servant leadership perspective, but also because it evolves, because we change, and the discipline is evolving
yeah.
also. So how is that maintained, the organizational structure and thoughts for expanding it?
Okay. Yep. So every year in the annual cycle, before we get to the election period, the question is basically asked: Are the board roles fit for purpose that are coming up for election? So we did. So say, well, we were electing a new treasurer this time round. So clearly we'd need a treasurer, but is that role set up right? Is it doing the right things? There is an opportunity every year. Can we ask our questions about, are we getting too deep, are we getting too ossified? I'm sure the very wise people on the board could take that into account, but being serious, I think it's a very fair point, and I'm sure that periodically taking stock of the organisation is an important thing. In this coming time period, one of the topics that the board is reflecting on is what is the right balance between volunteer and professional staff. So the board isn't afraid of asking the big questions, and I'm sure if we start to look at wider things, that's the sort of topic we're also getting insight through the chapters and the sector leads, because all of us have got professional experience in that. But in effect, each year we have an opportunity to evolve the structure that was up there a little while ago. Is it perfect? Probably not. Do we keep trying to aim for wherever the target is? We do our best, yeah. Okay.
Very good, thank you, Alan. I'm going to cut us off now and then get us moving. We've got a lot of material covered, but I really do appreciate you taking time out and having the expert present the material is always valuable. Next up, I'd like to introduce Kevin Weinstein. Kevin's a chief engineer at Booz Allen Hamilton and is my deputy. He's the deputy Americas Sector Director. He's also served as the assistant sector director for chapter relations since 2016. And that's kind of when you have an issue with maybe people in your chapter, this is the guy you call, and that kind of thing. Hopefully not very often.
Did you volunteer?
He's been a member of the Washington Metro Area chapter for over 10 years and was a member of the WMA Board of Directors from 2008 to 2018, and served twice as president and as treasurer, membership chair. So he kind of knows what he's talking about when it comes to chapter ops. And with that, Kevin, over to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
And again, I'll remind all our speakers to kind of just focus on the real high points so we can get through the material, which will be then available on the keys to successful chapter site.
Thank you very much. So first and foremost, I would like to thank everyone in this room because you being here shows that you have a commitment to chapter excellence and for helping INCOSE move forward in its mission. So for that, I'm grateful to all of you and hope to continue to serve as a resource for you as you start this adventure of chapter leadership. So my email address is kevin.weinstein@incose.org. So any questions you have about running a chapter, any problems you run into, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. But to survey the room really quickly, how many people are brand new to chapter leadership? This is your first experience with it. Count a handful. So raise your hand twice as high if you have been a chapter leader in the past.
I know how to run into the ground.
So keep them up for a second. So all of you new folks, these are great resources for you. Other chapter leaders, talking to them about your problems, finding people who've gone through similar things or are going through similar issues are a phenomenal resource. And a lot of what I learned as a chapter leader came from talking to my counterparts in other chapters. And the fact that we are such a global and diverse organization, we have people who've seen everything. So part of my role, I want to help connect you with other chapter leaders who have similar interests, similar goals, and really my job is to make all of you successful. So keep me honest and let me know if you're running into any problems. So we'll start with the next slide. I believe we're going to talk a little bit about certification to start with. And Renee Steinwand is one of the people in the world who has the most knowledge on professional certification in INCOSE. So I'll ask her to come up and talk to that topic.
And Renee, you should also introduce Courtney, who's hiding behind.
I'll say, is she here?
Yeah, right there.
So my running joke is I work with Kevin. I used to work with Tony, and Courtney used to work with us too. So we're all kind of, Booz Allen, either before or after, whatever. I guess the thing I just wanted to do, just highlight some real quick things. I've offered in our chapter to do a brown bag on certification, why get certified, things like that. I think certification, I mean, to me that's why I've gotten involved in INCOSE. Because I felt like I was, actually my undergrad's in math and my master's is in aerospace engineering, but I felt like my whole career what I was doing was different pieces of systems engineering. So I didn't feel like I had a certification. I went through a PMP class and I was like, oh, that isn't what I do. So I didn't get the certification. I know Kevin did. But anyways, so to me, certification kind of solidified what I was doing. Because you also, I'm a CSEP, and so part of that, if you might be familiar with CSEP and ESEP, you have to document also your experience and how it relates to systems engineering. So it's not just, hey, go apply and pay your money and get a cert. But you do have to go through, there's a whole process. It does talk about multiple levels of certification. One of the reasons Kevin asked me to talk about this, and one of the reasons I know Courtney, is because we've all taught a certification class at Booz Allen. And we have done that because it was important to us, but we also want to try to get more folks certified. So that's, I probably know way more about certification than you guys ever cared to know. But there is a whole process. I will say I do think the INCOSE site is pretty helpful because I give Courtney feedback when I can't find something. But I mean, that's the other thing that's kind of cool about this organization. I think you mentioned this earlier, is that INCOSE is a small enough group that you can reach out to people and find out more information and readily get that back. So like as we're going through like the coursework, which actually I teach a 2-day kind of, it's not really a boot camp, it's a 2-day fire hose of the handbook. And then we send people off to do their application and take the test. So go to the next slide. I don't know how many slides do I have. This talks about the different levels. Again, that is really well documented on the INCOSE site. There's also forms associated with each of these application processes. We have a site at Booz Allen, it's a Yammer site that Kevin and I maintain, I think a lot of it, that has a lot of information on how to become certified. But a lot of times I will not tell people go there to download any information. I'll tell them to go to the Incosi site because recently they updated all their forms. So it's important for folks to have the latest information, especially if any of that changes. There are 3 different levels. ASEP, we usually encourage folks who maybe are just out of college or all they want to do is get the cert. They go study the handbook, take some practice questions. We have some sample questions that we do. I think Incosi now has a bank too of some questions. And they basically take the exam, pay their money, and get the certification. CSEP is a little bit more involved because you have to document your experience, and then ESEP is a whole nother, 7-page form? That's with nothing filled in. But actually, it's just a much more complex. Actually, Tony got his ESEP, a couple years ago? I think so. It's a little bit more involved process. But the different levels of certification I find are great too, because wherever people are in your organization, they can usually fit into one of these. So go ahead to the next one. So one of the questions I had to my chapter was, hey, anybody want to get certified? Because I was willing to do like a brown bag or even a weekend course, something like that. I would say we didn't get a huge response, but I would encourage folks, if you can get involved. One of the things I talk with Courtney on a regular basis, so for instance, LA is doing a paper exam every quarter now, I think, is that it?
Twice a
Maybe,
year.
or twice a year, okay. I know we're doing one tomorrow, right? I say you're doing one tomorrow, paper exam.
8 o'clock tomorrow.
If anybody wants to get certified, just go take the test. It doesn't count against you if you fail, okay?
Does everyone know what a paper exam means? Because it's really an interesting concept. If you, Renee, or Kate, Courtney just want to do 1 minute on it. Well, the paper exam, no application required,
Right,
no money required.
right. You just
Just
take
walk in and take the test,
2
period.
hours though, right?
If you pass, you're not anything, because you haven't applied yet.
But you've learned something.
But you know that now if you just submit the paperwork, you will be an ASEP, and if you have the 5 years and can show it, you can become a CSEP at that point. But you have to pay to apply, you don't have to pay to take the test. So the
Right.
test is free, and when we say paper, that's as compared to going to a testing center that has those little booths and, those kind of environments. So this is one of these rooms like this, and you get those little Scantron things like in high school.
Because usually when you take the test, it's $80, I think, still dollars, whereas
In the
this is
US,
free.
it's even higher outside the
Higher
US.
outside the US, okay. So, I mean, the other thing I encourage folks is if I'm teaching a course and there's gonna be a paper exam coming up, I tell students in the course, go take it, see where you're at. I, on the other hand, would never do that because I want to pass the first time I take it. But it just depends on your personality, right? So, let's see. So I think the big thing is recognizing systems engineering professionals at chapter events, and post-certification exams. And like I said, Courtney's very readily available to help guide you through that process if you want to do that. Like I said, I offered to do maybe something at our chapter just to, hey, what is certification? I should build a brown bag that I have for our company, so I can easily do that in like 45 minutes. The other thing that I was just talking to Kevin about just recently is PDU opportunities. So those are professional development units, so like any certification, you have to maintain that certification. CSEP is good for 3 years, ASEP for 5. ESEP, you don't have to take the exam and it's good forever, so, but you gotta get through the process. So the PDUs though, there's lots of different ways to obtain PDUs, and those can be chapter sponsored events, so like we did a tutorial, so we offered up 6 PDUs for that particular event, things like that. So it gives you an idea of things you could do with your chapter. Maybe once a year, your chapter should think about hosting something related to certification, something like that. And is there anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay.
I'll add one color commentary. I find an easy chapter hack is if you have trouble finding programs, call Courtney and ask her if she'll do a over the web presentation to your chapter on what's going on in certification and how do you get there. It's valuable and it's easy because she'll always say yes. It's nice having a full-time program manager for certification.
What did you say about ASEP, CSEP being good for so
So
long?
there's different levels.
But you said it's good for so long, so.
Yeah, the certification is only good for a certain amount of time, and then you either have to For ASAP, you have to upgrade to CSAP, right? Which is 5 years.
So the ASAP certification is good for 5 years, and then you renew by submitting 120 documented hours or professional development units. The CSAP for 3 years before that renewal. That's kind of a summary of that.
That answer your question?
So you just have to show that you've done your PDUs to get your cert back.
Which, you know those monthly webinars that Nkosi typically hosts, they're 1 hour? I know a lot of folks, they just listen to those every, once a month, and that racks it up. A lot of times professional courses, like I took a T&E boot camp, that was a 3-day camp. And that's John Clark, right, John?
John Clark, hi, training working group chair. Just familiarize yourself with the training working group website on Connect, where the 34 1-hour modules on the handbook are stored for your download and enjoyment pleasure. Drive time with John or whatever you want. Also, the LA chapter is rehosting each one of those once a week, every night, Thursday nights at LA on Global Meet, and rehosting those webinars, and I tune in and answer questions and answers. So if I can be of any help to you at all, please feel free to contact me. I'm here all week.
Thanks very much, John. Appreciate you mentioning that. That's another great chapter hack, is just to run the tutorials. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort because they're up online already,
They're all there.
and it helps the chapter.
There's an added benefit, La La Land is playing in the background.
I didn't-
All right, thank you very much, Renee, and let's.
That was an LA joke.
Back to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Renee, our newly appointed Assistant Sector Director.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I really do need to introduce her. Renee is the Assistant Sector Director for the Western Region. So if you're a chapter leader for the Western Region of the U.S., this is your first point of contact if you have any questions or needs or anything like that. We'll talk more on Monday.
So I will fly through some of this information because we are a little bit crunched for time, but part of TechOps is influencing and harmonizing standards, making sure we're consistent across the board and promulgating best practices. So if we go to the next. Model-based systems engineering is a major initiative within Nkosi. You've probably seen that there's a whole working group around model-based systems engineering, and this slide gives you a bit of a roadmap on it, and if you've sat in those sessions, you'll probably hear a whole heck of a lot more about it. So go to the next. Bookcase is another great initiative, the systems engineering body of knowledge. This guide is a really nice compendium of a whole bunch of really consensus SME approved information. So a great resource for learning about systems engineering, teaching about systems engineering, or pointing other people to when they have questions. Next slide. So there are a whole bunch of working groups, and a lot of them are having meetings this week. So those meetings are completely open. So if you see any that interest you, please feel free to join them. Next. And here's a list of many of the working groups. This is not all encompassing. There are some that have been added since this slide, but feel free to see if there are any that interest you, join those groups, and contribute to TechOps. So top CAB needs, we have the competency working group, the agile and expedited methods, effective trade studies, and product line reuse. So have some POCs on this slide, so if those are of particular interest to you, we're trying to advertise those. So
That's it.
that's more, okay?
All right, next I want to introduce Serge Landry. First I want to get the slides up. Not that one either. I want the slide. There it is. There we go. Okay, let me introduce Serge Landry. Serge is brand new Sector Director for Asia Oceania Sector 3. Pardon me just a moment, here we go. He currently serves as the Head of Systems and Software Technical Domain at the Research and Technology Lab of Thales Solutions Asia in Singapore. He acts as a technical authority for system engineering, provides project management expertise, and assists in developing technology roadmap for system and software teams. So with that, I'm not going to go through your whole bio because we only have 4 hours.
Right.
So, Serge, thank you very much for joining us today.
All right. So I'm going to talk to you about the chapters and the role of the different officers of chapters. And you can go to the next page. Why have we having chapters at all? We could have everything online, and we would be losing the human touch. Chapters are are a very necessary evil. We want people to come together and network. That was said before. Networking is one of the strongest assets of being part of such an organization. With a local content. And that's what I was saying. Okay. The mission of the chapter, it's, okay, I'm discovering some of the slides at the same time. It's the first time I do this.
It's all right, I never saw my slides. I didn't see anyone.
Yeah. The chapters are here to provide some local content, social content, professional content. You want to facilitate the continuous professional development of the engineers. You want, of course, to grow, provide opportunities to get more members, support technical activities at the local level, get people to work together at hours of the day which are alright and not in the middle of the night connecting to the US. You are trying to market Incose, get Incose out there, get it recognized and attract people, and and push the profession. Basically, you are contributing to the system engineering profession. Give back. Next page. Okay, it's all about networking. Did I mention that before? So chapters typically have to engage in activities to stay relevant and to make it worthwhile for people to want to join. We are talking about meetings, we are talking about tutorial workshops, mini conference, you name it, you have to be creative. We are also organizing tours of companies, make it as interesting as you can, and you will attract people and retain them. Of course, the point is also to communicate. Communication is always of importance at the local level. Getting the information from the sector level through a channel. There are also a lot of initiatives to create local content, about creating local stuff. Let's go on.
Okay.
So there's content done across the world through different groups, but localizing that content is of importance. How to be critical, how to be successful as a chapter. We have chapters who are doing very, very well. We have chapters who are doing less well, and we strive to make sure they wake up. One of the very, very important things is to have training for the chapter officers, the new ones, and continuously also beef up your knowledge of recognizing what other chapters are doing better than what you do, and going out there and getting those very easy, low-hanging fruit that you could apply locally in order to bring benefit to your corner of the world. It's a teamwork effort. Leadership is a teamwork effort, so your local team must really get geared together. It's not a single person who's a Superman and who will run the chapter. This will not last. You have to plan, and you have to execute. A plan is a bit like a project. You have problems, and you have to solve them. You have to improve on your situation. You are at a certain stage today, certain stage. You want to go somewhere, and you start implementing the different stages to reach there. And of course, there's some leadership, contact with the sector level. So you have to engage with your sector level in order to get more information, to get and to report back and forth what you need, and then propose new ideas. We talked about budget earlier on. There's a budget available to make a difference out there. So it's just a matter of getting the spark going. What kind of idea, what kind of things you want to implement, justify why it's good for your chapter, why it's good for Incose in general, what is good for the profession, and Incose Central will be more than happy to help. Incose sector will be more happy to help. So different work groups also have the means to help. So you just have to be creative find ideas to implement, and you will find a lot of people who are willing to help.
And Serge, if I could add on a
Sure.
really poorly kept secret, the sector directors at least always underrun our budgets.
Yes, that's right.
If you've got a good idea, we probably have the money.
Yep. We don't have enough of those.
Can we
good
quote
ideas.
you on that one?
He waited until
Any
Alan left
idea?
before
Of
he
course, if you're
said
not
that.
willing to put a little of your own skin in the game, then I think.
There you
go.
You probably want paperwork too.
We have very light paperwork for the ideas. We have some forms to fill out, some criteria to justify the different boxes, and then we'll be listening and we lead you into what we want to support. Why chapters? I was there, right? Is that a repeat?
Similar enough, go for it.
Okay, of course, you are having fun, but you also have responsibilities as a chapter. And it starts by looking at bylaws. On the INCOSE website, you can find the bylaws of what a chapter should be doing. It has been modified very recently, so you should really keep a look at it. Continuous training is what you need to do. It's not because you've been a chapter leader that you know everything forever. We are evolving, we are improving. So a chapter must have a certain number of roles. Compulsory are president, president-elect, secretary, and treasurer. It sounds very similar to what is happening at INCOSE Central. And you can have many others. There's a minimum number of members that you need to keep. Again, this is a 25 magic number. If you are 20, we will probably close one eye, but we will encourage you to grow. Why? Because you need the critical mass, you need a team of people that can work together to contribute. Not everybody will be having the time to contribute, so having sufficient number will allow you to have energy to create activities. You have to have a bank account, you have to hold an AGM on a yearly fashion. You have to document your meeting with minutes. There's the twice annually report that is now required. The good thing about that is that it's international report, so we don't have like what we used to have in the past, a specific way of reporting for sectors. We are trying to standardize it across the board. The idea of that is to try to benefit from the good things being done. So it's easier if you have a template. Financial record, of course. You are a society, so you need to be answerable. There is some financial obligation, so you have to be careful to have the proper authorization when you deal with money. You are an officer and you have those responsibilities in front of the law. There is also something a bit more difficult. You have specifics for US chapters and the other sectors. You have to report your financial status before the 31st of January if you are in Sector 1 in the US. If you are non-US, this deadline is slightly different, but it's also early in the year. So non-US will report their financial status in 2 ways, locally in a certain format and for the central office. So a bit more work there, but it's just a form, so it's not so bad. You have to now be very aware of the logos. I'm staying on this page because responsibility are important. So if we want to have a strong marketing message, we must make sure we use our marketing image the proper way. This is what this is about. And you must have sufficient services for your member, that is important. Sufficient activity, sufficient things that you can provide so that your members know that they're getting value out of their membership. So value is a keyword that we have at INCOSE Central. And you must provide this value down to your member. It's very, very important that people understand that they are getting something out of it, otherwise you will lose it. Okay, and we all want this win-win of value. We are not just doing this for fun, are we? But we are. We are trying to make this world a better place, and we want to see that this happening. Great page.
that's a duplicate, sorry. I already picked that up.
Yeah, okay, this is new from yesterday, so this is newly baked. We think that it is critical to engage the new members in order to achieve retention. We are suggesting that you work on the package for welcoming new members, and we will also work together to try to do that. So there will be a package for new members to orientate them, know where they can find things directly on the website, what is Incose already providing in a standard fashion across all the sectors. But you would like to be more personal, you'd like to reach out to your members and understand why they join, what are they trying to achieve, what are they looking for, in order to prepare some guidance for them. Maybe they want to network with certain type of people, and you happen to have some good friends that can fit the bill of this networking. So you can tie them up directly to somebody who can provide what they're looking for. So you can actually guide them into the right direction. Because it's not obvious out there, we have a lot of information on the website. In Connect, finding it requires a little bit of getting used to it, so that's why we have these kind of sessions. And you should start engaging the people who join your chapter early and get to know them, what domain are they interested in, and do they join because they're looking for certification, do they join because they want to contribute to a certain domain. There are a lot of reasons to join. And of course, all these are recommendations that you have to adapt according to how much manpower you have at one moment and what is your preferred mode of engagement in your chapter.
Let me add one point that we didn't add in there.
Yeah.
As chapter leaders, you should be getting an email that lets you know you got a new member. Now, if you didn't know that, or you're not getting that email, Danny Wave,
Yeah, right.
email Danny and say, set me up.
Yep.
And that way you'll get that email and then you can do these things.
Does that work for when someone transfers their affiliation or only when you get a new member?
I think the specific, sorry?
New and renewal.
New and renewals is what Don says. So we'll have that.
Yeah.
Do you have to be paid for?
Say that again louder,
Do you
Denise?
have to be paid in order for the emails?
Ah, Gotcha.
But IT is working hard to try to automate a certain number of the processes, and I'm sure we're not doing enough of automatic things. And any idea of something that would make your life easy should be reported back. Remember, we were talking about the rewarding ideas. We want more ideas. We want to know how to improve the automatic engine that we can install behind the IT to make life easy at the chapter level. Around the world, there are 3 regions. We have Tony William for Sector 1. We have Jean-Claude, who just arrived for Sector 2. And now by you, myself, for Sector 3. You see the statistic of the number there, to give you an idea that we are a bit underrepresented in Sector 3. We happen to have a few people in Asia, and so this number is meant to grow, to rebalance the statistic of what is the world today. Americas and EMEA are not too far as a balance, so we should be able to grow in Asia, and we have seen that we have doubled in 2 years, which is a good sign. Okay, so next stage, we can really benefit from this variety of point of views from the different sectors, from the different chapters. In the US, there's a lot of chapters. Tony, you want to comment on that one?
We have a lot of chapters in the, what
Can
you'll see is
you
there's
name 3
two active chapters outside the U.S. in Sector 1, that's Brazil and Vancouver. Vancouver is an odd state because they're actually being rather quiet in favor of an emerging Canada chapter that will subsume them as well. But other than that, the rest of these are all in the U.S.
What do you mean by NIA?
Missing in action.
So, yeah.
And in fact, I was talking to one member from that chapter who says, I want to help, and that was as of today. We've sent emails to them and got no responses, so there's no one home. What I mentioned before, chapters are either, it's going to be very strong, or maybe not so strong, or maybe need some, well, that's what you're seeing there.
Yeah.
Tony, a question.
Sure.
What is Central Florida? You have the Orlando in the chapter, and then you have the Frisco chapter. What is the Central?
And that's one of the bigger problems, is it's misnamed because it's Tampa.
Then, what about the West Coast? Don't they have West Coast chapter?
Terry is actually the lead of the re-emerging Emerald Coast chapter out by Eglin, Fort Walton Beach area.
From Pensacola to Panama City,
So,
and a little bit of Tallahassee.
and we have an emerging chapter in South Florida. So I got grabbed by, I won't name her, but she's the president-elect, saying, why do you really need 5 Florida chapters?
It's a big state, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big state. It's 10 hours from end to end. So-
No argument, but even in the Houston chapter, which is, it's still too far for people to drive from one side to the other to get to a meeting, so we have 2 or 3 meeting locations. What's the difference?
But do you realize that in China there are 2 chapters? So in terms of numbers, maybe it's difficult to maintain so many chapters. And in this day and age, you can use computer, connect to each other.
But a lot of people want personal interaction. A lot of
Yes.
people that I know want
But
to
we-
engage, they want to network in person.
We are working on that.
That's our challenge.
You can have branches communicating at a distance that the people can see them.
So not to make a determination on how many chapters Florida should have, just to share something really cool that happened in WMA, because I sat in your very seat once and I was saying, we should not be broadcasting meetings, we should have people in person. This needs to be a networking event, and I was proven very wrong in our case that we ended up having the same number of people coming to our main event where the speaker was, and then doubling the number of participants by having a remote location. So if it's helpful for, I'm sorry.
Didn't get together to meet, though.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Just
have
clarify
multiple.
for
So-
The model that's further successful in WMA and LA chapter, in Houston and Chicagoland, and probably several others, no offense, is number of healthy, equal rooms with food being provided, with good IT and acoustics. And so there's networking going on in all these rooms. It's not just people dialing in from their bedroom in their pajamas, which would be kind of boring.
And some people do that too. That's not.
It's not all.
We offer that, yes.
So that model works pretty well. I would just add one more note. Here chapter's biggest challenge, getting volunteers, right? Wow, if you were to merge like out southern Arizona and central Arizona, we're talking to each other going, we could really lean into each other a bit more, it would help. If you have more chapters, or if you consolidate some chapters into less, then you have more volunteers to draw from. Just a thought.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm a little confused about the goals between the chapters and the working groups, because I'm a new chair of a working group, but there's also a regional group too, and I don't hear anything from that regional group, and I don't know if I would have enough time to
When you say a regional group,
geographic region.
but not a chapter.
Regional working group.
And that's something that we really don't see that much in the US, it's mostly in Europe especially.
Yes, so I can say.
Jean-Claude, you can talk
Yes,
to
I
that.
can say some word on that. So, in fact, we have to distinguish between what we call local groups. So I don't know if it is what you mean by local group. In fact, it exists in Europe. So we have, for instance, in France, in UK, in Germany, local group within the single chapter. In France, for instance, we have the AFIS chapter, which is mainly in Paris, but we have also a local group in Toulouse, another one in the southeast, etc. So in UK also, so the idea is to have people close together geographically and in such a way that they can have easily a short meeting, a couple of hours, it's easy. So this is the idea. And also specialized per domain. It could be aerospace, it could be healthcare, etc. So this is the idea. And you don't have to mix with local working groups, which is in fact the continuity with Tech Ops working group, but locally, or chapter working group.
Yeah. So you can have isolated groups working independently from each other, or you can have groups, one federation of groups, And if those people are working on one piece of the cake, the others are working on another piece, then you can gather, put back everything together at a central location. That's the floor. Let's move on.
Move on.
Okay, Jean-Claude?
Yes, so can say some word on that. So for EMEA sector, EMEA stands for Europe, Middle East, Africa. So in Europe we have, I would say, some big chapters such as UK, France, Germany, Netherlands, which are very big chapters, nearly so above 500 members. So I think they are very mature and very active. We have some others. In Middle East, we have only one chapter, which is Israel, ILTAM, which is also a big chapter, nearly 500 members. And in Africa, we have South Africa, which is also a very big chapter, about 500 members. Then we have some emerging new chapter in Middle East. We are trying to outreach and to create other chapter. We have a point of contact. In Portugal, we have also started to have a contact to create a new chapter. In Tunisia, so North Africa, and we are aiming to organize a conference in March in Tunis to make this chapter creating. So that's it for, and we have also, of course, so all the Western Europe is covered with Italy, Spain, etc. So this is a very active sector.
We should do a map. So doing some geography lesson.
I'm actually looking for a geographic information system that would help us with where our chapters are and what regions they're covering. Because it seems like it's going to be very doable.
Okay, let's move on. So you see Asia Oceania, very small region. We have a minimum number of chapters. Again, some are a bit dormant, and we have a bunch of chapters who are very active. I didn't put the 2 big chapters because I don't have enough numbers of members yet, but it's potential that we have Thailand joining us soon, and New Zealand as a possible candidate. So we have Australia very strong, China, and India moving up strongly. Japan has been there for a long time and is doing its own thing. Korea has slowed down a bit recently. Singapore is small but active. Taiwan and southern China are asleep. See what we can do. Okay, let's move on. Oh, okay, that's done half my duty. About the chapter roles. This sounds familiar. I think it was already there, so it's a bit of repeat there. A privilege and a responsibility. And you should not be a one-man show. You need to work as a team. Okay, so the real-world development experience, so it's a very good school for learning how to deal with an enterprise. So it's to get used to dealing with other people, is to build something. So if you are your own enterprise and you learn a lot from it, much more than if you were to take a degree. The success of the chapter is directly related to the effort that the commitment of the team members. So teamwork there will play and will be critical. You see very much that if you have an active committee, your chapter will thrive. If your committee is empty and not there, the chapter number will reduce. There's an obvious relationship between the two. So you need some energy out there. And why are we doing this painful thing? Because we want to contribute to the world, but it's also a way to accelerate your career. And I think there are a lot of examples of this throughout INCOSE, of some of the members who have benefited from their involvement in their career. I know that some are preparing some little story about their life to actually encourage people to understand that there's value in contributing. You get a lot by giving. You actually get more by giving. Let's move on. I thought that I already said that. A bit of a repeat there. The term can vary depending on the chapters. We use 2 years as an average. and you can have a lot of roles. It, of course, it's depending on the size of the chapter, what you find valuable for your work. But if you only have those three, then you will have to call for volunteers. If you already identify some role, then those people are aware of what is expected from them, and they can pick something that they are that they want to contribute onto, like membership or communication. So different people are skilled for different things, and they like to do different things. So that's one way to do that. Go down. I thought I mentioned that as well. Chapter planning is of very, very big importance. So after election, the team should come together and start preparing 1 year, 2 years, and study what they want to achieve and start building the different stages to go there. Here are some examples of things to do to get a gauge of where you are, where you are doing well, where you are not doing so well, so that you know where to press, what button to press to get the impact that you require. Talking about the SWOT analysis, for example. And of course, you have to align yourself with the vision of Ecosec. If you wish to do something different, then maybe you shouldn't be in Ecosec. But you also have the channel to go back and say, I would like to change something. So you can propose things. So remember, we are fishing for ideas, but ideas can be a comment in a meeting saying we should do things differently. So you can channel things back to the Ecosec control and say, I want to change things. And we listen to you. Of course, you have to justify why and what value you will bring. Then, once you have done your strategy, you should look at your operations. How exactly are you going to execute your strategy? And so the different kind of things that you can consider, whether you want to put a strong focus on membership, communication, on promoting events. What's encouraged is also to have a look at the succession planning. Do not wait until it's the time is up. Start looking around who could replace me. It's part of your duty to try to interest people to take over and to groom them so that there's not an abrupt change. About the responsibility of the president, by the way, that is a bit of everybody should be involved in helping the president. So I'm not going to go through all this, but there are some interesting things that have been put in place, which is aligned with what we are talking about today, which is the Circle Award. The chapter, so the Circle Award is meant to have a kind of checklist of all the different kind of things that the best practices that have been proven as helpful to make chapter vibrant, that you can follow. So you've got this checklist that you can submit once a year to get an award potentially. The idea of this is to encourage the chapter members to come together and the committee members to come together and to see what they've done well, what they could have done, because in there's a list of things that others are doing that they might not be doing, and to decide on how to improve the next year and to do better. Okay, that's an example of the checklist of all the things the president should be thinking of. And it's better. He should better be organized so that he doesn't forget things. But that's a good way. You have your checklist and your plans, and you know when you should put the pressure. It's good to make use of the past president, because the past president knows a lot of things, so he can actually start a lot. So yeah, there are some recommendation of where the past president can be useful as a mentor. With a small little note here that the past president should not do the work that is meant to train and to groom your committee members. So let your committee members try to do things on their own and to improve on their own. You can suggest things, but don't do the hard work for them. Let them try and learn from it. I was talking about the line before that, which is that line. Let's go down. President-elect is of course standing for the president, where the president cannot do things or is too busy. And he is the one to push the chapter circle forward. He's supposed to really get on to his activities and to make sure the chapter is doing well. He's preparing, he's grooming himself to take over as president. Okay, let's go down. Okay, one or more president, yes, if you have a chapter of big size, I guess you can break down. Okay, so you can see that overall he is responsible for a lot of things. This the vice president, but he can delegate things, and that's why we have other roles for that. And again, nothing new. We have talked about that. Then, as I said, promoting closer to other organizations. Being very hard to increase the membership, to retain people, or to develop the chapter further, create events. I'm repeating myself. The secretary is a very important role, reporting minutes, but also waking up whoever is sleeping. It's really a hands-on activity, but also a strong responsibility. Communication is also of importance there if you don't have a comms role. Okay, encourage participation. That's what I was saying by waking up people who are sleeping. Now, CHP 100 is the bylaws for what a chapter should be and should do. Mentioned that. The treasurer has got also a very important role to make sure that the money is well used, that the in and out are being kept in balance. It's nice, a lot of signatures.
I'm sorry.
Alright, it was nice.
It is. Okay.
I'm almost there. Okay, so and he's got to perform a number of duties towards the law of the country where you operate and towards Inclusive Central. That's pretty straightforward. Which in the end,
That should be it.
right. Any questions?
Thank you much. You know what I'm going to suggest is let's write down your questions, and during our social period, when we have a beer in our hand, we can chase Serge down and ask him then one-on-one.
Right.
And that way we can increase our likelihood of getting to the social.
But then we won't all know the answers.
Fair enough. But we're running real late.
So sorry.
No.
That's because you put too many slides on. Sorry, I know Tony.
Alrighty. So you just heard what is a chapter and what are the functions of the offices. The next is going to be, so how do you get it to work? And in the Chapter Excellence Program, next slide please, we're going to talk about really two things. Keys to effective chapters, next, and the awards part. Before I get into it though, how many here don't like the Circle Awards? Say it that way. I heard a cultural thing yesterday, and I'm not going to out the person who told it to me, but they said in his culture, awards are considered negative. Like you do your job because it's your job, and have to be given a prize. So it just scratched my head. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yes, I would like just to add one comment on that, because indeed we have a different approach on the Circle Award. And so being in charge of the EMEA sector, clearly we have in this sector, so we have, even if we have very active and efficient chapter, we are not, I would say, in favor to propose award, just because we don't have necessarily the same feeling about the award, and I know that every year is the same, so I am pushing the chapter to make proposal, and I know that a lot of chapter in EMEA has got award and at the highest level, but clearly this is not, so there are two aspects. First, this is not in the culture, or maybe not at the same level than in the US. Second, of course it is extra work, and most of the time, so this is one of the other reasons to prepare the file. But I think the first reason is clearly a cultural aspect, so at least in Europe. It was just a comment.
But that was really a surprise to me, so it's an interesting point. Okay, next please. One comment, just in 2011, I did my first run as a chapter president for the Texas Gulf Coast chapter, and I looked at these awards as Mother and Cozy is trying to tell me how to run my chapter, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna do it my way, because I'm gonna figure out what we really need to be and make us meet our needs, because my constituents are the chapter members. It went okay, but the second time around, I realized, and I learned so much more, and I realized that basically, if you do the things in Keys, which is also the things in the chapter awards template, you will have a successful chapter. Those are the earmarks of a successful chapter. So I kind of came around very far in the period between those two roles. Next, please. I'm going to go quite a bit faster. Year after year, consistently effective chapters get involved with their membership. They do interesting events and they do planning. It's really a lot about planning. And the activities also help you recruit. Running a great program that attracts people who have never heard of you before, that's where you get your members is your main area. Next, please. And I'm gonna, so first off, how many of you been to the Keys to Effective Chapters Wiki? Okay, good, good. Challenge. We have a lot of very experienced chapter leaders in the room, as well as some of the new folks. For the experienced chapter leaders, I challenge you, it's a wiki. A wiki means it's interactive. A wiki means you contribute your ideas there. So my challenge is, especially if you have a laptop open, contribute. Just what I'd like to ask, especially of the past presidents who are just rolling off, go on the wiki and add in your own ideas. That's what it's there for, and that's what's going to make it better. So we'll get into the details of it, but the Keys to Effective Chapters Wiki does these things. It's a place where you can go for training. So 5 years ago, what we're doing right now was done before. And the recorded videos from that period are posted, as well as the PowerPoint slides, on the Keys to Effective Chapters Wiki. The recording from today, as well as the slides, will be posted there as well, as they're after the process. There are templates there. There's a really cool planning process that you can fill in some forms, answer some questions, and it will help you guide you through your thinking for the year. This is really timely for the folks who are assuming new chapter roles right now. Now is the most important time of the year. Getting your team together, having a planning session, a strategy session, figuring out what you want to do for the year, and then phasing that into an operations planning, which is where you take your strategy and actually say, well, what activities are we doing when, where, who, how? If you get that done, the rest of the year is a downhill glide, because you've got the hard work out of the way and you'll have a successful year. If you don't do that, you'll find yourself struggling all year round. What sort of speaker do we want this month? And that's not really where you want to be in July. This also clearly links into the Chapter Circle Awards, because it's the same stuff. The same kind of things that you might plan to do during the year are the things that you'll get rewarded for in the Chapter Circles Award. Veteran officers are here to help. Just what I was saying a moment ago. I really would challenge these experienced past presidents like, say, Bill Scheibel, to get on the wiki and offer some ideas so we make the process better.
Yes, sir. Be glad to, sir.
I actually contributed something yesterday, by the way, Don, so there is one addition. What I contributed is what I call Tony's Chapter Hacks. And it's posted up there, so the other challenge, if you want to see it, you can go take a look. And it's little stupid things like give free food away at your meetings, people will come, you know, that kind of stuff. Next, please. This is.
Oh, there it is.
Go ahead, Alice.
We were just gonna ask. That's what we wanted to know.
Well, Don put in this comment here. Just Google, you'll find it. It's the first hit. Google and Cozy Wiki. Boom. This is the kind of material you'll see in there. So the training. So another easy practice is the videos are recorded. Get your team together, get some sandwiches, and watch the videos. You'll have a common feeling as to what your roles are, what your jobs are, and that's a great basis for planning. Let's go keep going. I'm trying to catch some of it. This is what you'll see when you go to the wiki. The different categories across the board. There are templates baked in there for planning, for strategic plans, for operational plans. So rather than having to invent the wheel, just go here and you can find the resources, and clearly as we can contribute to it, it'll even get better.
The search box really works.
So if you're looking
Search at
for.
the top on the left. That works.
And you can see the various areas kind of do cover everything there is about being a chapter operator. Operating plan, outreach communications, planning, reaching out to INCOSE, communications and so forth. I have several chapters that put out some really wonderful newsletters, and I'm going to start posting these here as well, just as examples of what other folks do. I think it was Kevin mentioned earlier, and I want to really foot stomp what he said. Really the biggest resource to a chapter leader is the people in this room. Because these are the people who've been there, done that, stepped on that cow pie already, figured out how to get around it. And we're better to learn than by just collaborating with your fellow leaders. And so that's really why we're having the social after this, so you can get to know each other and be able to trade war stories and business cards and be able to do that collaboration. I try to structure the Sector 1 chapter leaders meetings, which we have monthly, basically to provide that collaboration environment as well and to highlight best practices and things like that. Next, please. So the organization we're going through, and you'll notice, I guess this is the next slide. We're going to walk through real quickly, and I'm going to just show you a couple of cool pictures, but I'm not going to go into a lot of details. But these are the areas within the wiki that we'll be walking through. Next. There's an officer training component. This might look familiar. This is today's agenda as well, just by coincidence. Next, please. There's a planning component. I'm a bit anal retentive and I'm a planner. I like to have a plan in front of me, so this is just natural for me. As I mentioned before, just foot stomp that again, this early period of the year is a really, really high leverage period in the year for a chapter. You get your strategy and your planning figured out, and you'll have a roadmap for the rest of the year that you don't have to follow.
That's an error, I didn't get it corrected. The Word spreadsheet shows they're due April 15th.
Okay, so that should say April 15th, FYI. Next, please. I took away the builds. I think the messages here are kind of, by the way, this is a little hard to see, so really take a close look at what you're looking at there. The stairs going up. Now clearly, just doing the planning isn't super fun, so we need to know when to say stop. But it is very high leverage. Next. Things that you look at as you're building your chapter strategic plan, clearly our vision and our mission and strategic objectives, but it's also going to be filtered in terms of the needs and current state of your chapter. If you're a new chapter, you're just coming out of the starting blocks, running the MBSE symposium is probably not your first goal. It might be a little, lower to the ground. The chapters are very, very varying levels of maturity. WMA, if you ever get a chance to watch or participate in one of their events, they're a machine, they're incredible, they're over 1,000 members.
Close, yes, yes.
Say
Yes.
again? So, one other hack is I post on my America Sector SharePoint meeting invites to everyone who'll share them with me. And as we're all web broadcasting, or many of us are, there's nothing stopping you from dialing into Bill's meeting, or now Shakira's meeting.
No, it's Subash.
I'm sorry, Subhash's meeting.
But to that point, yes, it's the same thing applies to everybody, because we all have really good speakers, and although the timing seldom lines up, I mean, anybody can call into our meetings, and we've had other chapters, because it's streamed off one of the websites, so it doesn't
So,
matter.
as an individual, you can take a look and say, well, that topic in Chicago looks interesting. What we could also do is, and we had it in Houston, we had a chapter speaker bomb out 2 days before the meeting. And we discovered that Huntsville was having a meeting, book review, on the same time and date that we were planning to meet. So we just dialed into their meeting and we had our meeting. And since we have remote locations anyway, it didn't even look that different to one of them. So, next please. So you go from the strategy, what do you want to focus on? What are the big themes to the operations component? Now this is saying, okay, who's doing what? What are we going to do for budget? What are we going to do for each individual officer? What are their roles? What events are we going to do? How are we going to recruit and retain? Those kind of things are all part of the operational plan. Next, please. So these are the tools that are within the wiki. Our goal is to update them this year. A chapter planning workbook, I'll show you some pictures of that. The template for the plan itself, which is what you would deliver. And as mentioned before, these deliverables are things that Circle Awards count off on, and they also need to be at a certain time as well. And the How to Do Strategic Planning PowerPoint is also in there. Next. So this is what the planning workbook looks like. You can't read it from here, but basically what it's saying in each of these sections, it's giving some instructions, and then as an example, officer training should be planned, this is the black text, to be conducted immediately after election. Write in the box how you're gonna do that. We're gonna get it, we're gonna email everyone the videos, we're gonna have a meeting with Bagels, and we're gonna have the videos, whatever you're gonna do. So that's the way you go through this, and it's sort of almost like a survey or interview-based way of planning, asking those questions. Your SWOT analysis, what came out of your SWOT analysis? Everyone know what a SWOT analysis is? We're all good system engineers, good, all right. So you get the idea of what this template looks like. Key message, it's there. You don't have to invent it. Next. I like this table in terms of as you move from strategy to ops. What you see in this table is what are we gonna do for the year? What kind of meeting? We're gonna have a chapter meeting, we're gonna have a family outing, we're gonna do a tutorial. What's the topic? Who might we get to present it? And you know it's not necessarily all filled in. If you know what you wanna talk about in a certain time frame, you got some time to figure it out and fill in those blanks. That's a cool little tool. Next, please. Once you have the plan, the arguing and debate that creates the operational plan, then you just lay it out in words and write it up, and that's what this is showing you. This is the plan template. Next, please. So best practices. This is the area where we can really improve the wiki the most, is by contributing these best practices, as I've been nagging people in the last half hour. There are some good stuff in there as well, and things we have already from what have come from Circle Award submittals. So next. So doing, without activities, the chapter is pretty much dead, right? Chapter meetings, monthly chapter meetings is a goal, but at least quarterly is the requirement. You still are in the CGFM update of the chapter policy. Tutorials are another one. Again, they brag on WMA. They've got the best tutorial program I've seen. They have a monthly tutorial, is it?
Oh, it's every other month.
Every other month. And it's like a Saturday 4-hour kind of thing. Great for your PDAs. They broke the code on realizing that PDAs in ECOSI and PDAs in PMP and PDAs in somewhere else, they're all a little different. They built a decoder ring and they managed to design the tutorials to scratch all three. Kind of a cool approach. I know Shakira's not here now.
Yeah, Shakira's the one who did it.
As I'm bragging about her. Regional conferences. Within Sector 1, we're sort of shaping towards having 4 significant regional conferences as well as a few others. The Great Lakes Regional, and Eric Bell will be talking about this in a bit, so I'm not gonna steal any more thunder at all, in fact. Next, please. Other areas, and this is all available both in the slides and in the wiki, so I'm just going to flip through these one at a time. Next. You all can read those just as well as I. Next. Technical side, so you have, I thought about it as in terms of the blind men around the elephant. Folks are mostly familiar with the idea. A group of blind men come upon an elephant and the first one touches the side and says, aha, the elephant's like a wall. And the next one grabs the tail and says, aha, it's like a snake. Clearly, if you experience ECOSI from the chapters, you have one experience. If you experience through working groups, it's a whole different thing. If you experience through international functions like this one in IS, it's a whole different thing as well. This is just highlighting the technical side. Next. Outreach. I know in our Houston chapter, we frequently would get together with AIAA and have joint meetings with them or joint socials and things like that. Relatively easy thing to do, as well as it gets you points on the Circle Awards, as well as it gives you a good activity. The idea of volunteering as SEs for a nonprofit task is fairly fascinating. Next, please. And these do match very well to the awards spreadsheets, if you've seen those. Collaborating with other chapters, that's a real theme that Kevin has been pushing for us, and I think it's a great theme. One thing we've done in Sector 1, actually Kevin did in Sector 1, is we did a survey to find out the strengths and weaknesses that each chapter perceived of themselves. And we asked them, would you like a swim buddy to help you with this? And most raised their hands and said yes. So we matched up chapters who said, hey, I'm really good at X, with chapters who said we could use some help at X. And we created about a dozen pairings of chapters within Sector 1. And I know in some cases they're already moving out and having those conversations. Just why reinvent the wheel if someone else has already figured out how to do the job?
Tony, it's somewhere else, but you might want to mention at this point the new Good Neighbor.
Oh, thank you. So one brand new award that has been created and we'll be awarding it for the very first time at the IS, I think, in 2019, is the Good Neighbor Award. And that's specifically for a chapter that helps another chapter. And then this is not to say you should do it just for that reason. There's lots of good reasons to do it, but it is a $2,000 prize, which is a fairly good prize. And we see a lot of chapters already doing this, and we just want to keep on encouraging that kind of behavior. Next, please. Chapter ops elections, clearly. How many of you all use the eCOSI chapter elections tool? So this is, figuring out how to do an election is a pain. Again, this tool does it for you in terms of the mechanics of how do you communicate the ballot, how do you collect the votes, and all those kind of things. So it's handy, and Danny can connect you with that as well if you haven't already done so. Next. So clearly a strong, I would say the chapters are the place where most COSI members experience in COSI. Clearly Tech Ops is a big place as well, but I think the chapters, so a strong chapters mean a strong in COSI. Within my sector, my main challenge right now is identifying those weak spots where chapters are struggling and trying to figure out how to shore them up and help them out. So that we can do that. Working together, helping the chapters grow stronger is the key. So, next page. So we just did elections. This is due. Next page. So the awards process is done, and you all probably should know this, was just due the first Sunday of January is when the awards spreadsheets are due. The grading actually finished up today. I saw some emails that the meeting is going on somewhere in this building to review the results of the scoring. And those awards are announced at the IS, which will be in Washington this year. So if you, I guess being sensitive to cultural differences, if you don't want to do the awards, no one's telling you you have to. However, it is a pretty good metric that tells you how you're doing as a chapter. Next, please. The same kind of information that we talked about in the Keys to Effective Chapters is what the Circle Awards measure. But of course, as a rigorous organization, these chapter awards are based on submitted evidence. And there is a folder structure within SharePoint, or within Connect, I should say, where you drop the different evidence pieces, where you can drop your strategic plan, your membership rosters that shows your growth, those kind of data points. It can be a bear to populate, just keep that in mind. So Don would beat me up if I didn't say, this should be a process you're doing all the way across the year, something the President-elect does, and you can drop these evidence items in as they occur, so you don't have to pull an all-nighter on January 5th next year to try to get the information all pulled together. You'll also get a better job out of it. And having the President-elect do it is a great way to prepare them for the role they'll be taking on.
The whole idea is that this data is what you should be using in your board meetings every month or quarter, whatever you have, to manage your chapter. You need the data anyway. So it's just a matter of taking that data now and putting it in the, uploading it to the award site if you want an award. But you need this data to be able to manage your chapter.
Very quickly, if I might, Tony. The Circle Awards are rich enough that you can put whatever agenda or strategy or personality your chapter wants to represent for its membership and still be guided by this general best practices of what a chapter should be doing. And you can focus in different areas depending on the maturity of a chapter or your interest. So I want to make it my own way isn't in any way blocked by participating in Circle Awards. We may need a new word, a recognition or a distinguished status, service medal or something. There's got to be a culturally equivalent word.
Thanks very much. Are you Tony?
No, I'm Randy.
Oh, okay, Randy.
Sure,
Sorry
about
about
that
that.
chapter. Happy to meet you,
Tony, I had a question on it. Is the SharePoint place available for the chapter to use in their normal operation of business? You know, so we've gone through that January 5th exercise this year, and actually somebody has the prior 2 or 3 years. It's been more transparent than it was. We messed it up this year. But is it available where when we are working on our strategic plan, we can just store it there instead of storing it over in our chapter SharePoint?
I'm not an expert on it.
Yes,
Tom,
you
but
can. The site is set up, it has to be reset for each year. And it's usually set up, I don't know if Danny's in there or not, but it's usually set up around March. They get everything ready to go. But there's a lot.
So you're saying once it's set up for 2018, then yes, you could use it as your file cabinet as well. That's an interesting thought. All right, so let's keep going. Was there another question? Oh, hello.
So maybe I wasn't clear about my last question. Is the governance of a working group that fundamentally different from the governance of a chapter?
They're really very, very different focused things.
Okay.
Right, a working group is international and is, focused on the technical area that you're working in. And to be honest, I think it's very
There's no board in a working group, there's just a chair, there's no president, vice president, secretary, it's very different.
And there's a lot of different lessons you'll want to learn from the other working group leaders on how to keep continuity and succession that maybe don't map as well to the chapter space. So I treat them as separate but complementary animals.
Next, please. So this is what it takes to get to the different levels of awards. So how many of y'all have already submitted in prior years and won Chapter Circle Awards? Excellent, that's awesome. So we can move on. Y'all know this. The spreadsheet we talked about, and the first time, the spreadsheet itself is educational, even if you don't look to the planning material that we talked about on the in the wiki. The spreadsheet itself tells you what you need to do to plan your year, so you can even look there. Not as nice as the planning template, but does the same thing. So next, 12,000 points for platinum, 8,000 points for gold. We talked to that. There are requirements to balance. You can't ace one area and win the gold and platinum awards. You have to really score high across all the sections. Next. Due date, first Sunday in January. And then there is a really significant effort to grade those. Graders in here, anyone been grading awards? A couple? If you're an experienced chapter leader, this is a really cool thing to volunteer for, to help out the Institute. Next, please. And this is that review process. Seasoned, what a nice word. 3 reviewers for submission. You can't grade your own homework, of course. And then there's a process for norming across the different inputs to ensure that folks are not skewing data one way or another based on whatever reasons. And you can appeal if you care to. Next, please. There's special awards as well for chapters, and these are submitted not via these spreadsheets, but they're just submitted via nominations. President's Award, Director's Award, Good Neighbor Award, that's the new one that was mentioned by Don a few minutes ago. The Most Improved Chapter is the Director's Award. I thought it was interesting that you can win the Most Improved Chapter every 3 years, according to the requirement. So, and I guess the only way to do that would be to dissolve the year after you win it, and then have to rebuild. Next, please. So the chapter, if you think about it, the chapter awards are really a not subtle way of trying to influence the chapters to do the right things. And it works for the chapters that are doing the right things. I think we're going to look this year, though, Don, at how to look at that whole process again. So that'll be what we'll be working on. Organizationally, we just met yesterday, and I think we're proposing that we'll have now, I'm not even gonna go into that whole long story. We'll talk about that elsewhere. Sorry, never mind. Next. And the question was, how do we organize keys and awards in the new org structure, since we have the sector directors rather than a single member board, and it's a lot of details that we really are not that interested in. So keys to effective chapters and the awards. This is the results from a lot of seasoned chapter leaders, a lot of successful chapter leaders, and that's why we created the things we think are the right things to do, because it's worked for other chapters. And clearly, in my opinion at least, if you're doing these kind of things, then you are having a successful chapter. We definitely want feedback. These email addresses work, but even more important, as I've been highlighting earlier, please contribute to the wiki. What would really be super cool is if this wiki was a live, dynamic conversation amongst the chapters about the things that are working.
Allows for discussion as well. I mean, you can have a discussion area so that you can post and other people could, give their opinion and have a dialogue going on, not necessarily posting a product.
So it could be a really fun place for us to work issues that are challenging to all of us. This whole idea of not reinventing the wheel, it seems to me that nearly all the areas that we're working on, someone else already solved the problem we have. I'll pick on Lori, since I just met her today, and she expressed this challenge. We're just geographically so distributed in Florida. The Emerald Coast, we've got 100 miles from one end to the other.
Only 35 or so people over that whole range.
And then as Serge mentioned, we got 2 chapters in China. So, and even in the Washington metro area, you guys have 4 meeting locations?
2.
2?
But the problem with the Washington metro area, which probably is, there's actually 6 chapters surrounding the Washington DC area. And there's some commonality there in the fact that most people there are involved in federal engineering of one kind or another. So, but, we kind of overlap. Actually, Mike Pafford and I have a deal, don't cross the Potomac. I stay on my side, he stays on his side, we're all good friends. But, we got Central Virginia, Southern Virginia, we got all these different chapters. In reality, it could be one big group. It isn't, but it could be.
And the point I mentioned that, Lori, was simply to say, in the Washington area, like in the Houston area, like in the LA area, even if the geography is smaller, the traffic is such that it's just not gonna happen to go across town to go to a meeting after work. So, tele-meetings, web meetings is what the successful chapters just used. So, all right. So that's my get off the stage, and I'm trying to rush through this. You have all the material. Hi, Alice, yes?
I know your current action, you're almost done, and time's almost up, and was your intention to let everybody know all the groups that are existing in COSI? I mean, I saw working groups,
Well, we didn't say anything about academic affairs.
Well, that's not actually why I'm standing up. There's also a group called Empowering Women as Leaders in Systems Engineering that I just want to make everybody aware of, especially new members. The goal is to help women feel like, a place where they belong, where we can help them in their journey to leadership in systems engineering. And it's open to men and women. We would like men and women members to our group, but the purpose is to advocate for women.
Very good, thank you, Alice.
Thank you.
I don't know that we objectively were trying to make sure we covered all the parts of
Okay, I know,
the
but I
COSI,
just
but it's a
saw
good ad.
everything with that.
In fact, would you go into the wiki and add it?
Which wiki?
The keys wiki.
The keys wiki. Yes, I'll
Thank you.
Say the name again.
Elsie?
So it's Empowering Women as Leaders in Systems Engineering, so we go by EWLSE, but we pronounce it Elsie. So we went with Elsie. I think that Alan did that. Helps out that.
So with that, I'm going to introduce Eric Bell now. Eric is newly appointed as the Assistant Director in Sector 1 for events. So the reason for that appointment is we have a number of cool events going on across the sector. that don't know about each other. So once again, each one of them is reinventing the wheel. So we've challenged Eric with that task. Prior to that, he was the assistant sector director for the Western region. Now Renee has taken over. And the rest of your wonderful bio, of course, is way over there, so we'll just leave it there.
That's okay. I also did serve a couple of years as a member of the COSI Board of Directors. And in 2 occasions, I was the president of the Los Angeles chapter. So I've been through a lot of what you're experiencing, and very happy to continue supporting the organization at both the local chapter level and now at the international level.
Now, I know we're our promised time, but I asked
We have
you
like
all,
1
is
minute?
can we go another 15 minutes and challenge Eric to work through this in 15 minutes? A lot of the material he's going to show you is actually, how do you get a Global Meet to work? And so there's screenshots and things like that.
Okay. Who's controlling it?
Tony.
Okay. We talked about the central office. We are talking about those whose lifeblood is to help in COSI. And next one, please. And Danny is in here. I was going to say stand up.
She's hiding on the
Here we
floor
go.
over there. No, stand up, really.
As a member of COSI, you get communications from the office. They're a great resource for helping a lot of chapters. For instance, Danny is the one who will kind of help you get set up if you want to run your elections using the tool. So please do not hesitate to reach out to these people. They are COSI employees, and they are there to help the organization grow. So I don't think Christine's in here. She's out there somewhere. But is Carol out here with us also? I haven't seen her. Okay.
She's here in town, yeah.
All right. So next one, please. We're going to talk about some of tools that you can use as a chapter that are available through the INCOSI Central. Whenever we talk about INCOSI Central, we're referring to the office in San Diego. Next one, please. Okay, Global Meet.
Can I interrupt just one point? Let's pick a term to stick with it. If it's going to be a COSI HQ or it's going to be a COSI Central that we constantly deal with. When somebody tries to refer to the San Diego operations, what's it called?
COSI Central.
Central, right? Okay, COSI Central. So cold recent, so we have no more HQ and all this stuff.
I've never heard the term HQ.
Well, yeah, we've been on the East Coast for too long. These things happen.
So you invented this, we can't be responsible for what goes on inside the Beltway.
Hey, we have Congress, what do you want us to do? Okay, no, so it's COSI Central is the term.
And COSI Central is the administrative.
All right, brother, thank you.
For those of you who are, particularly we talked about the issue in Florida, what a lot of these other large chapters that still have multiple sites, they use a tool like Global Meet to basically say, here is the central place where the speaker is, but through the use of information technology, Global Meet, we can actually have 4 or 5 satellite sites, and you can set those up to also have networking at the satellite sites and food, and they are tied directly in to the meeting. And so this is a great resource. You should consider using it, particularly when you have challenge getting all your people to come to one site. If you can start setting up satellite sites, that's what we do in LA. That's probably what they do in Washington and Houston. And in LA, for instance, we're very successful to go all the way from Santa Barbara all the way down to Orange County. And that can be a 4-hour drive in rush hour, especially when the 101 is closed by mudslide. Next, please. As you can see, there was a link there to the user guide. What happens when you use the Global Meet? I believe there is a calendar that gets set up. I'm not 100% certain. Danny, could you elaborate on what exactly this is? I think it's just saying all the meetings that are being used can be seen on one calendar. Can you?
Correct. So this just shows you the meetings. If you go to the next slide, it gives you the rundown on how to do it. You must be logged into cozy.org first, then you go to connect. If you hover over the help button and scroll down to webinar services, you'll have the option to download the help guide so you know how to use Global Meet, and then you can also request your Global Meet.
You know, Dan, there's a few charts here that are better off if you come on up here. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. This is how you can best explain to us. So.
She's shy today. So the key message is, if you go to the Connect site, the rightmost button is Help. You push the Help button, and there's 2 choices there: Manage distro lists, oh, by the way, you can manage your distro list there. Or set up a webinar, or ask for a webinar, and that's where you just punch in your time and your date and all that stuff, and they send you an email a couple hours later with your information.
And as chapter officers, we talked about you having the ability to get the list of your members. You can call Danny or some of the other help there, and they will assist you in getting those very important lists and how you can download it.
You can actually get the chapter list from your profile, so if you need to know how to do that, I have a help bank with that as well. You can go to the next page. This is just kind of showing you what information you're going to need. If it's a recurring meeting, there's an option to select it, and then it drops down the date and time so that if you're meeting the first Monday of every month, you can have it reoccurring so that we're not reassigning you a new global meet every week. You go to the next page. And that was just a further explanation of what I just said, so keep going. This is probably too much information for this kind of meeting, but I was just showing you how to log in to Global Meet. Since we posted these online, I kind of put in probably more information than we can actually go over right now.
So basically, we don't have to read them, you know where to find them.
Yeah.
To walk through it. I'll mention that Global Meet seems to frustrate some people, and I think it's just because, at least in my business, we use the heck out of WebEx. And this is a different service, so you gotta learn another trick.
Available.
And
You
we
just
do have
have to
WebEx available.
there's a little checkbox so that you can request a WebEx resource.
Right, the challenge with WebEx, I think, is we're limited in the amount of users that dial in,
Sure.
so if you're having.
And I do know that there are some issues if you work in an aerospace and defense company about being able to download software through the administrator. So that is sometimes the reason why somebody might use WebEx versus Global Meet.
Do you need to install something on your notebook or?
To use Global Meet, yeah, you have to download, there's a desktop application. I don't think it works on cell phones.
Right, but let me spin that a little. To host a meeting, you need to download software. To attend a meeting, you don't.
End of the year financial reports, this doesn't apply to the EMEA sector or the Asia Oceania, but for the Americas chapters, I did send out an end of the year financial report. It also has your leadership template on there, so you can put in all your new board members, so that way you send it in to me, and then I update all the permissions. It's probably like a good half hour for me to just put in permissions for the new board, so the sooner you get it to me, the sooner I can update permissions, because it is quite the process to update the permissions. And those financial reports are essential for you guys to get paid for your chapter shares, which are paid in March. So just so you know, if you don't submit your end of the year, you won't get your shares until it's submitted.
So that's valid for.
That's not for your sector.
That's all right.
Right, and actually,
Yeah, that's what I
Danny,
thought.
keep in mind, this is actually an international room, so why don't you tell the whole story?
About what?
Sector 2 and 3?
I don't
Financially?
Yeah, go ahead.
Each country has their own set of laws.
Oh.
So for instance, you will find out that the German chapter, we call it a chapter, but it's its own little mini INCOSI because they have German reporting laws that they have to deal with. And I'm sure it's the same in France and probably most every other country in the world. So that is one of the reasons we went to the sectors versus the member board, because we had to realize that there are these different legal requirements and cultural issues. So this makes it very much more robust, and it helps us deal with the flexibility that's necessary.
They're also changing the way the chapter shares are divvied up, so if you guys have time tomorrow, and I think Monday, there's a CGFM meeting that you can go to if you want to know more about how the chapter shares are going to be done now. I don't have that much information because I need to go to that meeting.
Just to add a little more confusion, in the US chapters, just so you know, in some of the worldwide chapters, the chapters actually collect the dues and then send the remaining part to INCOSI, and they keep the shares. So it's sort of a flip of how in the US we pay the central office and then they send us a share.
So those are MOA chapters like Germany, the UK, the Netherlands. There's a couple other European ones that I can't think of right now. France, Italia, yeah, there's a few.
Okay, let's keep going.
This is just a sample of what the spreadsheet looks like for the financial report. It's pretty basic. Your ending balance for the previous year, your income, and then the next slide shows you.
Hence the importance of the role of the treasurer.
And
and then it's your expenses, and then what your end of the year is. It's pretty basic, pretty easy to fill out. And then you also have to submit your end of the year bank statement for if you have like any savings or any sort of investments. You have to include the end of the year statement for all of those. And this is the leadership page I was talking about. Make sure you include all your new people. And then this section's important too, because if you have other people, like a membership chair that needs access to like downloading your roster or sending out the confirmation emails, they need to have the correct permissions as well. For ordering things like Post-it notes, pens, we have some banners for loaning out, and then we also have certification brochures and membership brochures. You can go to Connect, and then under the America sector, just go down to available resources. Click on that link, and it shows you pictures of everything that we have.
Lots of swag.
Yeah.
Very good for putting out at your meetings. Particularly, you might have some sort of a conference or something where you are exposed to potential new members.
So this stuff's all for free. You don't have to pay for it. Just send us an email to info@incosi.org.
Do you still have the Nkosi light bulbs?
No. I've never seen those. I don't even think we have old ones laying around. So send us an email to info@incosi.org. Include your name, shipping address, what items you want. So if you want, 100 pens and 50 Post-its plus a banner, just send all that information to info@incosi.org with the date that you need it by.
They look like incandescent.
What?
Jimmy, remember.
Okay, some of this is
All right.
repetitive.
Yeah, we've covered this already. So,
Thanks, Dave.
just some of the things that you get through your membership is a number of technical products that don't come directly through the Tech Ops. These are actual publications that if you want a paper copy, you have to pay it more, and that's when you renew your membership, these options are on there. In a lot of cases, you do get to download stuff electronically for free, but on the others, you just have to see which ones have a fee associated with them. Definitely, anybody who wants hard copy, you do have to pay an additional fee. It does talk also about the online store. I won't go into that, but it was mentioned during the plenary session this morning how there's more and more content on there. In many cases, as a member, you get that free, like the handbook, if you want it electronically. Other things, there may be a fee involved, and of course, anytime you want hard copy, there are some charges involved. The Insight newsletter, I believe this is something that you can get free electronically. So I highly advise you to poke around to see what you have there. Most of it's through Nkosi Connect, so you would have to log on to prove that you're a member, and then you would be able to go to the Nkosi store. Next. Same thing here. This is probably more rigorous and academic versus more application oriented. Next. This one is a collaboration with another technical society. I think this is the Industrial Engineering Society.
Industrial Systems Engineering.
Industrial Systems Engineering. So we're going more and more, of course, through collaboration and to remain relevant for the future. And also, that's the whole thing about systems engineering. We have a knowledge base that encompasses all of the other specialty engineering. So it makes sense that we, in our efforts to make ourselves the preeminent, do these alliances. Next, please. The newsletter, I think you have to go in and subscribe to it. I do know that as a member of Nkosi, you do get an email. I don't think it's the same as this newsletter. Correct me if I'm wrong, Danny?
I think you get a link to it, and it'd be an email.
Right.
Highlight. You should get an email later if you link.
Yeah, I know we do get quite often an email from.
And then they save it in the archives on.
Okay, so there's all sorts of information available once there, and you are encouraged to contribute through your sector director anything that may be noteworthy that would be a benefit to the rest of the Nkosi population.
Or your working group, or whatever
That's true.
other avenues.
There are various avenues for you to be able to get your information in Nkosi.
So for Sector 1, I put a call out to all the chapter leaders saying, hey, I'm collecting inputs for the next quarterly newsletter. What do you want to talk about? And I got a lot of great inputs this time, so. I think we beat that one up.
Okay. Yep. the e-note was what I was referring to. Looks like there's ways to actually go and download papers from previous ISs.
Very useful.
So there's a whole lot of content for you as members. Webinars, you will get occasional monthly emails. I think Andy, our photographer slash board member, still organizes that, and she'll get some every quarter, at least one webinar as a member. We talked about the online store. I think we can just, and we talked about how important it is to update the chapter officers so that they will have the ability to download information that's specific to their chapter. And of course, you saw that already. We talked about the fact that we have the sector. I don't have to go into that. The Keys to Effective Chapters Wiki. I would never say we beat it to death. We probably haven't emphasized it enough and how important a resource that is. So I encourage you to go and peruse it, particularly since we're in the beginning of the year where you might want to set the agenda for how you manage your chapters. We talked about getting more membership rosters. Once again, that's tied to either getting some help from Cozy Central.
If you've got your permission set, you go in through Profile Home and you can look.
Yeah, you'll be able to pull that information yourself, and very valuable data on membership trends, and you can see where you might have some people who are about to expire, so you can reach out to them and remind them, or if they have, you might have the ability to still go out and say, hey, did you remember, are you still interested? So how you can manage your own chapters.
One other note is I have found that having a real dump from the member database that has email addresses and things like that can be pretty helpful for specific tasks. Like I think I sent Terry a list of names and emails of everyone within a couple hundred miles of the Emerald Coasts since he's trying to rebuild the chapter. As board of directors members, we have access to that and can filter it and remove any personal identifying kind of stuff and share it with you, just ask us.
It's very, very handy when you want to also set up your own chapter newsletters. In the LA chapter, believe it or not, we still use paper because we feel sometimes the only time people might actually read it, given the size of their inbox, is if they actually have something they can take to the throne or whatever other place that they enjoy reading. But it's a much bigger expense and a lot more logistics involved, but we see value. One of the things that I think most chapter leaders are in agreement with, you want to bring value to your members. And we'll go more on events in a minute, but one of the things that is seen as value is the newsletter. And it's much easier to do it by electronic mail, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we felt that too many people have an inbox that it just might not get to it versus everybody goes to their mailbox.
So you guys physically mail it to
We
the-
physically mail it. So we have mailing costs, we have publishing costs.
We have statistics where we have found that less than half of the members open our emails for anything.
But I gotta warn you.
So we kind of stopped doing the newsletter and focused more on the website and invites. But that's why we stopped doing the newsletter, because we were like, nobody's reading the emails.
If you're a large enough chapter with a huge base of volunteers and a good pipeline of future volunteers, you may find somebody who is interested in being a newsletter editor. And like I said, I actually did that. That's how I started in my chapter. I took over the newsletter before I eventually became the president and then on the board of directors. So let me tell you, I was outside a cafe one night, very, very late, folding newsletters, putting a stamp on them, and then putting a thing, and then putting the address label. So
But I can see where that's a good way to do it.
it's entirely up to the respective chapters.
Hope you've since automated that process.
Yes, we became very smart and basically hired the printer to do most of that for us.
I was gonna say, you can do that at Kinko's, they
You'd
have
have to
trifold,
outsource.
because we did that.
But at that time, that was not so much an option. And of course, you're sending your mailing label list to the printer. And I know that one of the things, particularly for some of the non-American groups, you have to worry about the privacy laws that are becoming more and more stricter in Europe. And I don't know how the Asia Oceania sector are. But you have to take into consideration that different sectors have different requirements and legal issues.
Let's see if we can wrap up with events.
Let's wrap it up with events. So, one of the reasons, of course, that Tony asked me to fulfill this new role is that we realize, and many chapters realize, that one of the ways to really bring value to your members is to have some sort of a conference or event where you can provide a forum for more than just an hour of networking or two, but maybe a whole weekend or at least one day out of the weekend for a mini conference. And we also realize that it's not an easy feat to do this. It's a great undertaking. It's a very big learning experience. And it seems that everybody starts from scratch when they do it over again. So he has asked me to be a liaison, a resource for all the chapters to come to say, hey, we're thinking of doing this. Do you have an example of a sponsorship program to get maybe some of the local companies to sponsor our conference? Now, I've been involved in a number of chapters, and I've actually got some flyers. This is one that we're planning this year for the Western Regional, and it involves at least eight chapters out west, almost all of the ones that constitute the Western Region. It's being hosted by the Wasatch chapter in Salt Lake City, Utah. The idea is we'll have a board that will kind of provide continuity through the years, that not only are they going to get some experience in the Wasatch chapter and how to do it, but that there's members from other chapters that will then be the host chapter the next year. In LA, we have a chapter every year. I've been involved for a number of years on different conferences, and we've got a rich base of knowledge. And so now that I'm able to tap into some of the other chapters, I'm going to have even more best practices and templates and so forth. And as I integrate with other events and other chapters, I'll be able to share that. It says, oh, for instance, the Great Lakes Conference, they've got some great stuff that we're using here in the Western region. LA chapter has done so many conferences, so I say, hey, here's our sponsorship package. I'm going to be meeting with the folks from the Texas Gulf Coast chapter and helping them with whatever things they might need so that they can have a successful thing. I'm hoping to meet with some of the folks in SEDC. So that's what I am there to do. I'm due to help you manage your conferences and hopefully bring you success. Next, please.
Oops.
This is just some of the events that are we've done in the past. We're here in Jacksonville again. Every year, of course, there's an international workshop and an international symposium. So I don't think we have to go too much into this. You're here, you know why you're here. International Symposium. This year it's going to be in Washington, D.C. in 2018. That's the next one. And from what I recall, in 2019 it will be Orlando. The 2019 International Workshop will be back in the Torrance area. That's the Los Angeles area next year. And thereafter, I don't think they have depicted. I know that the 2020 IS, they're homing in on South Africa, I believe, but it has not been officially announced. The whole point about it is we are an international organization. For the most part, they'd like to have a cycle where it's within the United States, outside of the United States. Within, outside. So you can expect to see that pattern on the ISs. Sometimes it'll go 2 years in the US and 2 years abroad, but the general pattern is it'll alternate. IW, as of now, has always been in the United States. I know that they're looking at possibilities of having the IW somewhere else. One of the key factors, it's got to be somewhere where it doesn't snow.
We are really trying to do maybe 2020 outside the U.S.
And we'll see how good that is. As part of my role, I am now liaising with the event committee so that we can make sure that we can coordinate as much as possible and keep everybody else informed. Yeah, this is kind of what I put together. Templates, knowledge, lessons learned, all sorts of things that you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
And I recognize this is perhaps a little Sector 1 centric, and apologies for that. But there are, as Eric's engaging with the international level events, I know that the other sectors are also providing their reps into that. So in essence, we're sort of creating Eric's role in all three.
Yes, I just met with my European counterpart.
Awesome.
I need to practice my French a little. Yeah, so there's some examples. We talked about Great Lakes. We're doing the Western Regional Gulf Coast. I know the SEDC. There's plenty of other chapters that probably have things. please contact me. I'm there through your sector director to be a resource. And speaking of some of the other chapter events, we can see that they also have a very similar structure in the EMEA sector. They have an annual, or I think every other year, they have a conference. And it's kind of like a regional, or excuse me, it's a sector level conference. So they've been in South Africa. Next year is going to be in Berlin.
And those did the European workshop, that for the second time. Last year was in Mannheim, and that was pretty successful as well.
And I know that in the Asia Oceania sector, you have a similar type thing. Is there a chart on that?
I don't think we had a chart on
Okay,
Asia
but
Oceania.
in the same flavor as when you have a type of forum in the EMEA sector, the Asia Oceania also has a similar sector type thing, and that's one of the reasons why we never had an Americas sector event, because we're so big. But it makes sense to start having in the regions within the Americas sector specific events. And yeah, these are just some more examples that you see there. This was provided to us by Jean-Claude. And we talk about affiliated conferences. These are not officially INCOSE run events, but we do try and make sure that there's some synergy. So part of the outreach to other technical societies is to make sure that we promote each other's conferences. This is actually an academic conference on systems engineering. It's basically owned by the University of Southern California and the Stevens Institute of Technology. And so they trade off who hosts it. Whenever it comes to USC, they've actually asked the INCOSE LA chapter to do the operational aspects. So every third year in Los Angeles, INCOSE LA hosts this conference in conjunction with USC. This year it's in Charlottesville, Virginia. And they have a different organizational structure how they run. I think it's more done with professional conference organizers.
One apology is Serge did provide me equivalent information on the conference activities in Sector 3, and we had a CM glitch. So before I post these to the Keys wiki, I'll fix it.
Thank you, sir.
We have some conferences typically in Australia. They have one symposium, and then they have a workshop also. So 2 in the year. Beijing is starting to have a conference per year. We have one every other year in Singapore, and we have one rotating conference around the region. So it's going to be likely to be in India next.
And I know Alan talked about going to Bangalore a few years ago.
Yeah.
As the INCOSE president.
And one other comment is, clearly the international events, the workshop and the symposium, those are the flagship events for INCOSE. And so it's important for us as chapter leaders. It's cool to run a conference, but we actually have a policy guidance that says you need to stay, I think it's 6 or 8 weeks away from either IW or IS, so that what you're doing isn't actually pulling from our flagships. And hopefully we can all see that's the right thing to do, because we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot at the international level for something we're doing in our neighborhood.
Definitely. I think it's 6 weeks. And that doesn't mean you can't have a chapter meeting. It just means that you don't want to have a major event that conflicts with that.
And there's one more conference INCOSE is associated with, because we belong to the American Society of Engineering Education. One of our, I don't know if you guys remember, one of our 7 guiding principles or I forget what they're called, was to raise the quality of engineering education. And that conference is in June 24th to the 27th in Salt Lake City. I don't know if we can put that on there.
If you send them the information, you could probably update the
I'll
chart.
do that. I'll send it to you.
Thanks. And this is obviously a snapshot as of this moment in time, but it kind of gives a little good overview. So I think that wraps it up, Eric.
All right. Well, thank you for the extra time you're giving me.
Appreciate that.
I have copies of this flyer if anybody wants to see any examples of what a regional conference might look like. I've got them in the back, so just come and get it from me if you want.
And Robbie, do you have any flyers for the Texas Gulf Coast Conference? Oh, too bad. All right, so we finished up. We're running a little bit over. I appreciate your forbearance. I'm not gonna talk any longer because we have beverages ready to come in as soon as I shut up, which I think is more important. But I look forward to chatting with you all during this, but I would ask one favor in addition to the wiki. Email me if you thought this was really horrible or really great or somewhere in between. Just let me know, give us some feedback. If you want to sanitize it, send it from his computer. But I really would like some feedback on how this went, the good, the bads. Clearly there were some organizational challenges, but I feel like it was better than not doing it. So that, what we do. But anyway, let me know. Thank you very much, and I'm done. And
How are you?
I am here.